Do you know what I was called in for today, old man? My director, Anderson, promptly called me after the lunch break. I immediately went to the newly transitioned CEO's office. "I'm sorry, did I make a mistake?" I inquired. "In this company, there's no job suitable for old-timers like you," Anderson stated. "So, you don't have to come in from tomorrow." It took me a while to realize that I had been let go. I had worked for this corporation for 35 years, starting in my 20s. All of a sudden, I had no job. Anderson would frequently comment on how slowly I worked and how unhurried I was. I always made an effort to work carefully and with consideration for the company's relationships. Was that the end for me? I became aware of the unfairness and decided I had to get a new work as soon as possible. I hadn't even given the thought of taking revenge on Anderson at that point. Ronald is my name. I'm 50-something years old and a designer. I lost my wife only 3 years ago, and I've been living alone ever since. I immersed myself more deeply than ever in my work to drown my loneliness. It may seem unusual in this digital age, but I design with paint and paper. Both our clients and the prior CEO thought highly of my job. But it didn't appear like Anderson was a big fan. When the CEO wasn't present, he would frequently disparage me. A newer CEO takes over after the untimely death of the prior one. He was eager to phase out the previous technologies and introduce new ones. Anderson appeared to fully support these contemporary concepts, given his strong relationship to the CEO. I got the impression that he was in a rush to adopt a more contemporary mindset. The new CEO declared, "We will move all operations to computer-based systems going forward. It has been forbidden to use paint for patterns ever since. We were to use computer software instead." Despite having worked in this field for almost 30 years, I hardly ever used software for my designs. My level of understanding was comparable to that of a recently graduated student. I felt bad for not looking into this sooner. Recognizing my error, I began daily study of design software thereafter. At the company, there were people in their 20s who had just graduated from college. I was able to learn a lot from them and eventually develop the necessary skills to perform my work. The 30-something, second-generation CEO decided to implement this policy because she wanted to follow the latest fashions. The glances I got from Anderson hurt a little because I was the only one in this department who wasn't really experienced with design software. I used to study by fixing my subordinates' designs, but eventually I began getting assignments of my own. Having worked in the field for so long, I was sure that, with the right information, I could produce ideas that could stand up to those of the next generation. But it didn't appear like Anderson was all that impressed with my work. "You move a little too slowly. Get it together," Anderson said. "People younger than you move more quickly than you do." I apologize. I'm still a little behind. Make certain that you do. We are unable to offer you much work at this time due to the lack of quality. At least one such conversation took place each day. I was relieved when a subordinate who had witnessed this urged me not to worry and to ask them anything. But I started to panic and quickly lost confidence because I was rushed every day. This may not be the right career for someone my age. I considered retiring early as my retirement date drew near. I was carrying those ideas around in my head when we got a request from a reputable client. They desired a painted design. That being said, our organization required the usage of computer software. In order to satisfy the client's needs, I wanted to accept the request. I chose to talk to Anderson about it once. "Anderson, I need to talk to you. I am requesting permission to produce a painting design that a client has asked without using software, just once." "What? What topic are you discussing? Recently, didn't we demand that software be used for everything? However, there is a specific need for this. We have had a long-standing connection with this client. However, it is not feasible to work with them going forward. This is the reason why the elderly are useless. Is it not apparent that analog is outdated?" Did the CEO not say as much? Digital AI may perhaps be used in the near future. You cannot remain in this industry if you are unable to keep up. I picked up the junior's software knowledge. I can utilize either, depending on the circumstance and time of day. Is it still insufficient? You're an elderly, obstinate man. Simply give up. The CEO essentially threw me out of his office. Anderson has been adhering to the CEO lately and following his instructions. I made more unsuccessful attempts to negotiate with Anderson after that. It was long overdue that I responded to the client. Anderson called me into the CEO's office one day. I knew what would be discussed because I had basically no work remaining at that point. When I got there, I made a deep bow. Seated in his chair, the CEO cast a familiar, patronizing glance at me. People always make the same expression when they try to push you away, and I could recognize that one. Since we entered the room, I have to admit that I don't really recall much of what Anderson and I talked about. But one line in particular stuck out in my memory. You don't have to come in starting tomorrow. I appreciate everything you have done thus far. I lost my position within 6 months of the second-generation CEO taking over. Furthermore, not just any exit. I lost my job. It was fortunate that my wife was no longer with me to witness this. This kind of self-exposure would be embarrassingly uncomfortable. I left the company to the juniors who educated me about the software and the clients since I felt so sorry for myself, and I didn't say anything to anyone. I was sad, but since I was officially fired, I didn't have the guts to thank you or apologize. Benefits from job, I suppose, would start right away. Still, I was itching to go back to work. I was afraid I would even fall if I felt this down all the time. That was on my mind, but as someone once said, do you really think any employer would take a 50-year-old like me? Despite my background as a designer, I was concerned that my incapacity to utilize the software might prove to be another obstacle. I sent resumes to several organizations for design, customer service, wholesaling, and secretarial employment despite my concerns. I must have distributed close to 20 resumes. Just one of the 5 companies who contacted me for an interview made it to the final stage. That particular business was a competitor of mine. I didn't think I would get the job. You undoubtedly possess the expertise. I looked at the designs you've been working on, and each one is beautifully crafted and visually pleasing. It would be a pleasure to collaborate with you. How would you respond? Really? Of course, I would adore collaborating with you. Then, how about we get started in a week? Please teach our newcomer the fundamentals of traditional design methods. I really appreciate it. Being appreciated for my abilities once more felt amazing. Once again, I was going to be a designer. I had been with the company for a month now, and I was slowly but surely picking things up. Then an unexpected event occurred. Almost $2,000 more had been taken home by me on my first paycheck at this company. Although it may sound a little harsh, this company offers really good income. Sam chuckled as I muttered something beneath my breath. Ronald, that's because you're so talented. I'm not sure how much money you made at your previous position, but you have a unique skill set that might succeed anywhere. Though a little shy, I was overjoyed. As I picked up the skills and gained recognition from Sam and my juniors, I questioned whether I was actually contributing to the squad. It was then that my phone rang. Anderson was the one. When I nervously replied, I was met with an indignant diatribe. You're not qualified as an adult or a professional. You're the reason why everyone is in difficulty. Please don't be upset. What took place? There's no time to dwell on the past. You quit your employment without turning in any paperwork. We don't have any historical statistics or client information. That's because there wasn't enough time, and I was told to leave on that day. Such pathetic justifications. How did you treat us? Within 2 days, submit the handover data, else you will be declared jobless and at liberty. Regards in advance. The call ended abruptly, and I was forced to take sole responsibility. If ENT found out that I was employed by a competitor, what would he think? At my current employment, I received new assignments that I needed to get started on right away. Troubled, I made the decision to speak with Sam. Sorry to bother you, Sam. My former employer called me just now and asked that I turn over the necessary handover paperwork immediately. I might leave for around 2 hours to take care of things. Well, that's all right, but you weren't exactly on good terms when you left that place, right? That is accurate, yes. You truly have the final say, Ronald. Although confidence can be difficult at times, you should have a healthy amount of it because you're doing a fantastic job. Although I knew in my heart that I didn't have to do this, his words made it official. I'm grateful. I will not move today. Sam smiled warmly at me after our talk and returned to his job. I didn't handle the handover documents that day. That was the end of my relationship with my previous employer. I apologize for the abrupt call. It's John here. Do you still recall me? It had been about a month since I'd hung up on Anderson and ended things when John, a former classmate, contacted me. I hesitantly answered the call, fearing that he might have been prodded by Anderson, only to hear an incredibly flat voice. Yes, you are in my memory. I apologize for causing difficulties and leaving so quickly. What took place today? Don't worry at all. I take it that the director and the CEO are the reason you left. We've been experiencing some issues. Apart from myself, it appears like everyone in their 40s and 50s is getting laid off based on what I've heard. It appears as though the younger workers who are still there are running the business. In addition, other issues have arisen as a result of the improper transfer. Actually, our CEO is nervous because we recently lost a big client. Additionally, there appears to be a lot of poor departmental communication, which results in missed deadlines. What actions should I take? In an attempt to comfort him a little, I suggested that such coordinating tasks should be left to a supervisor since he's a new recruit and doesn't bear that much responsibility yet. Then, he struggled to respond, saying, "The problem is, I'm the leader." The CEO told me that young people needed to stand up in this new age and that I should become a leader to include their thoughts after all of the senior workers quit. John sounded very hopeless. He recently joined this year and is a rookie. Even if I don't have the strongest will, I can sense that something is wrong. Even yet, I encountered opposition to the notion of voicing my disapproval to the director or CEO directly. I've heard a lot about his work, and it sounds like he has a lot on his plate, including meetings with the CEO, departmental coordination, client visits, and dealing with elderly staff. This might shatter him. He helped me learn how to use some design tools, so I wanted to return the favor by helping him. He mentioned that there was a client he used to manage, and it appeared like we were about to lose their contract, so I asked him what the biggest challenge was at the moment. The CEO has stated that's the one thing he wants to preserve above everything else. But to be honest, it doesn't seem likely given the current management approach. In fact, the customer I used to oversee preferred designs made with conventional pens and paper. I've reached my limit. I've been trying for 6 months, but I just can't do this anymore. However, I'm in charge here, and there are elders. It appears that he is thinking of giving up. Before his spirit crumbles, something needs to be done. I decided to tell John about an idea I had. He was taken aback at first, but it appeared that he eventually understood what I was saying. I appreciate you listening. I've decided, Ronald, because of you. You have my deepest gratitude. Come chat to me whenever you need to, John. I'm going to wait. I hung up the phone after that. I hoped I could help John in some way. I had taken the morning off on this particular day. To my amazement, when I awoke, I got more than 10 missed calls from private numbers. It might even be more than 30. With some reluctance, I called back, and my suspicions were verified. You're running behind schedule. What information did you give John? You are to blame for everything being damaged. It was unusual to hear Anderson on the phone seeming so agitated. I questioned, "What on earth happened?" It's true that I did provide John with some information. Today, John took an unplanned leave of absence. Not only is he not returning our calls or emails, but when we looked into his desk, we found a note in the corner that said, "Going to Ronald's place." I was surprised at how fast he moved. All I had done was offer to show him around my office if he was interested. Naturally, I informed him that I was unable to ensure he would be given an interview. "What steps will you take to correct this? There are some projects that have approaching deadlines. You were solely to blame for this. I'll take you to court." The word sue made me shudder, and as I opened my mouth to reply, I heard an employee ask for Anderson. There were also footsteps and the sound of phones ringing. It seems as though chaos might be in store. The phone abruptly hung up while I was thinking about this casually. Anderson's remarks have always been hard for me to take in. They have a sharp edge. But I'm not the same person that I was before. I feel much more confident now that I've been with my new company for 6 months. I wouldn't know what to say if someone questioned what the old man was talking about incoherently. However, it appears that I've been able to advance both technically and emotionally. Not that I think this is my fault, but I can't get the word sue out of my head. I made the decision to speak with Sam about it. I arrived at work as usual in the afternoon to find a familiar-looking young man cheerfully chatting with Sam. "Thank you so much for everything, Ronald. Thank you very much for the other day and for everything you've done for me at the prior company. I truly owe you one. I'm glad to hear that you're doing nicely. Anderson informed me. Did you leave suddenly? Has anyone heard of that? I feel ashamed. I suppose my career has failed." "No, John, not at all. Your life is at stake. When you've had enough, it's acceptable to flee. But in the event that you failed this interview, what were you going to do?" "Well, I would have winged it." Such a normal young person's reaction. That's a pretty nice way of thinking. Interestingly enough, he appears to be here for an interview. Do you know if he passed? A little uneasy, I looked at Sam. There was stillness for a time, then Sam smiled and raised his hands above his head to make a large circle. My shoulders were free of stress, and I felt relieved. John inquired later about my knowledge. I told him the truth about what had transpired that morning because he had quit. John left because of me. They vowed to file a lawsuit. I wonder whether someone will sue me. After a moment of confusion, Sam smiled his typical smile and reassured me that I should feel secure because after everything that John and I had gone through, there was no way for the other side to prevail. What they seem to be doing seems like unjust termination based on what you've told me. Perhaps our argument is stronger. Have self-assurance. By the way, was the CEO always that kind of person? Sam thought back to our past drinks together and the times our firms had worked together. It reminded me of the old-fashioned kind and collected manner of the CEO he mentioned. That may be the father, the CEO from the first generation. Once he died, it went to the second generation. Are you serious? They appeared to be quite different people, so I sensed something wasn't right. Now that I see. That company isn't going to endure many more months, in my opinion. In fact, today marked the resignations of 3 of my newly hired coworkers, and my supervisor has announced his own resignation. Their father worked so hard to maintain the company. Thus, it is inexcusable that they allowed it to fail. Okay, let me handle it the next time they get in touch with you. I'll let them know how I really feel. Sam's cell phone rang just as he finished speaking, so he quickly left the room. To be honest, I suspected the business was close to going bankrupt. Young workers with little professional expertise are launching new businesses and establishing connections with other industries. That is no simple task. My phone rang as I was thinking about this and talking to John. The phone number was blocked. When I picked up the phone right away, I could hear Anderson's voice over the loudspeaker, almost like someone screaming. John also appeared astonished by it. "Hey, clean up this mess. I've been juggling multiple tasks since the morning, and our staffing level is low. Since there's nothing I can do, I've also resigned. How are you unable to find work? At the very least, you can arrive and assist. Old man, when else are you going to look good? We must have spent 5 minutes or more having similar conversations. A booming voice came from the side just as I was about to hang up. Up until now, I've been listening silently. Is it a polite way to ask for assistance? That's not how you interact with people. Here, who is the true adult? There was stillness for a while, and then John yelled into the phone, releasing all he had been holding in. Then Anderson's voice became tremulous. Is that you, John? Please, John. I'm not upset. Return. Our CEO is waiting. You are needed. Thought to himself, he knew John would never approve. Then Henderson spoke in a dejected tone. Are you implying that the business cannot function without me, even if I am fired? I won't be let go because I'm a young man, not an elderly one. It appeared like he feared losing his job. He must be concerned because he has a child in middle school. However, he is only 4 years younger than me minus 49. He must appear to be an old guy to the CEO of the second generation. Look, I'll tell the CEO to give you a raise right now if you can keep working with the client that Ronald used to handle. Thus, will you not return? About that client, they've just signed a contract with our company. Sam seems to have heard Anderson and John's loud voices. As though tossing off the facts, he repeated them. During our phone conversation, I had requested John to notify my previous client of my whereabouts in the event that he planned to visit this organization for an interview. What on earth are you? Outsiders, please depart. Here, I'm conversing with John. Hey, Anderson, I believe we've already met. Are you forgetting? That was during the tenure of the former CEO. We shared a drink between us. My name is Sam Smith. At the drinking party, you came across as really sincere. Was that only a theatrical production? Anderson lost it big time as he thought of Sam. He was undoubtedly taken aback that someone outside of his company, from a rival company no less, had discovered the real him. Not to mention that John and I from the competing firm were present. At this point, what should I say to the CEO? It doesn't matter if Ronald is the one now. I'll hire you again, so please come see us today. The next instant, Sam was berating Anderson for his lexical choices. Anderson remained bewildered, and the phone picked up the sounds of everyone's commotion. Footsteps, phones ringing, apologies. I apologize, Ronald. Okay, just please return. This time, you can stay indefinitely. Can you pay me 10 times the salary? I could hear his voice losing its vitality. I was shy, so I think Anderson thought I would return, but I'm finally accepted into Sam's company. Nothing to be afraid about. 10 times? What topic are you discussing? You are aware that our business does not possess that much cash, correct? It is not possible if you cannot pay. As you are, please give it your all. At my current job, I'm paid roughly twice as much as you people. I'm not planning on returning. There was background noise, so I could hardly hear what Anderson was saying. I soon heard nothing more than noise till the call ended. I thought for a second that would never end after that, but then I heard John say, "That was pretty cool." After that, things happened quickly. Eventually, fewer than 1/3 of the workers remained after they continued to quit. It appears the company went bankrupt 3 months after my final communication with Anderson, unable to continue operating with such a shortage of personnel. Anderson lost his job even though it doesn't seem like he was fired because of a lack of employees. According to a former coworker at the previous employer, Anderson is currently unemployed and plans to live apart from his wife and children until he secures employment. It appears that his family was affected by his authoritarian behavior toward his subordinates. I've heard that they may even file for divorce. I wonder how Anderson is making judgments now that he doesn't have the CEO as a cover, as he sounds desperate. Ronald, I really liked your last design. You truly are amazing. I'm glad we gave you the job. I've been employed here for a year now. This organization acknowledges and commends me. Everyone tries to encourage one another. I was hopeless that day, but I'm here now because I was let go. I feel like I owe Anderson and the CEO of the prior business something. I've been given a lot of work to do, and I'm overwhelmed, but it's a nice kind of busy. I intend to work as hard as I can till retirement. No, as long as they have me.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick? Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked, we could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, "I'm thirsty." Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. Let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I obediently followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their inn. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike, what have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.